Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum. I'm here today at Guns.com taking a look at some of the cool stuff that they have in their warehouse. And today we have pulled out a Hungarian SA-85M. Well, that's what it's marked. It's actually an SA-85S. We'll get to that difference in a moment. And man, I'm dating myself here, but this is a retro ban era rifle that some of you young whippersnappers aren't even really familiar with. But if you are interested in Hungarian AKs, what you should definitely do is check out the new book specifically on the history of Hungarian Kalashnikov rifles that is just out for pre-launch with Headstamp Publishing. I have a link in the description text below. Click on that. You can check out our early photos of the book's layout. It's a really cool piece written by a Hungarian researcher who has access to FEG's factory records and incredibly detailed information about all of the Hungarian AKs, from the very first AK-55s all the way through guns like the iconic AMD-65, the really cool AMP grenade launching rifle. It's about the funkiest factory AK out there. The 5.56 caliber AK that never quite worked right, and then all the way through the civilian semi-auto versions that were imported into the US. So much of the detail in today's video is thanks to Laszlo and the manuscript that he has written, which now available for pre-order. So check that out in the description text below. Anyway, let's get back to our SA-85S or possibly M here. This is it is a semi-auto version of the rifle that FEG was manufacturing for the Hungarian military starting in the early 1980s, which was a slightly simplified version of their earlier AKM pattern rifles. The Hungarian military had a lot of AMD-65s, but a lot of them at this point were getting worn out and they needed to be replaced. And so the military was looking for a replacement option. And FEG said basically, well, you know, we can take our current version of the AKM and we'll just make that for you, right? Well, seems to work. And we can retrofit, like we can reuse some of the old parts, we can retrofit them into this configuration, save a little bit of money. That seems cool, military accepts it. But then after the rifles do well in trials, but they realize, well, we got the wood stocks on these things, and that gets rid of one of the big benefits of our AMD-65s, which is that they're very compact, folding stocks. So FEG comes back and goes, aha, here's the solution. We'll just build it with an underfolding stock. Presto, it's compact, it's portable. That gets accepted, and that becomes the AK-63F. And FEG would produce a lot of these guns, both for the Hungarian military and for the export market. On the international export market, military-wise, they would sell about a little over 181,000 of these AK-63F rifles to a variety of countries, everyone from Croatia to India to Zambia and more. And they would also sell them on the US civilian market. So in 1985, hence the SA-85 designation, they come up with the civilian semi-automatic version of the rifle. It's the SA-85M for modified. Semi-automatic only, but it is otherwise a standard, it's just a copy of the current Hungarian military rifle. They imported 8,000 of them through Kasnar into the US between 1985 and 1989. 2,000 had solid wood stocks, 6,000 had underfolding stocks like the military production ones. But in 1989, kind of the fun stops because Bush Sr. passes an import ban preventing military pattern rifles from being imported. So at that point, the factory goes back and looks at, okay, what do we have to do to actually make this import legal? And starting in 1990, they have the SA-85S, which is this pattern. And what they have to do to change it is basically accommodate the regulations that would become instituted in the 1994 assault weapons ban for domestic manufacture as well. They couldn't have a threaded muzzle, they couldn't have a bayonet lug, they couldn't have a thumbhole stock. Features like that. And so the rifle was redesigned to meet import regs, and we got this. Take a closer look at it. We can go ahead and start with the receiver markings here. We have FEG's manufacturer's mark, and then the designation of the rifle, which they were all marked SA-85M. However, this version with the thumbhole stock was actually designated the SA-85S, or Sporter, by the FEG factory. But the markings were never changed on the actual receivers. So semi-automatic caliber, made in Hungary. These were imported by KBI, that's Kastner Brothers Inc., out of Harrisburg, PA. The pre-ban ones, I believe, are actually marked Kastner. These are marked KBI, but it's essentially the same company. Going back here for a moment, we have our serial number, which is SM-1200-226. That actually puts this as a 1992 manufactured gun. Our upcoming head stamp book has the breakdown of production and serial number by year for both the military and the civilian rifles. Now, to look at the features that made this importable, we'll start at the muzzle. There is no threading on the muzzle. Threaded muzzle was one of the things, the feature types that was prohibited. So the muzzle just gets turned bare. Where we would normally have a bayonet lug on an AK has also been just milled flat and bare. Bayonet lugs were also prohibited features. The magazine well here is a totally standard AK magazine well. The 1989 import ban did not prohibit something like this in a way that the assault weapons ban later would, but the rifle couldn't be shipped with a quote-unquote high-capacity magazine. And so what FEG did was actually go take the 6-round magazines from their AMP-69 grenade launching rifles. Now, those 6-round mags had a little blocking tab in them so that they could only fit blank ammunition, not like actual ball ammo with bullets, as a safety factor, because you don't want to launch a bullet into the back of your rifle grenade. What FEG did here is they took those same magazines, removed the block so that they would hold 6 rounds of regular ammunition, and that was the standard magazine that was equipped with the SA-85Ms between 89 and 94. That said, these will take standard AK magazines. This is actually a Chinese one, not a Hungarian one. Locks in, fits just fine. Obviously, we have a semi-automatic fire control system here. That's the basis of all of the civilian semi-auto rifles. So 2-position selector switch there with a stop tab to prevent the lever from going all the way down. And then the glaringly obvious, horribly ugly modification that had to be made was a thumbhole stock like this. The import law did not allow pistol grips or folding or collapsing stocks, so it had to have a solid stock, couldn't have a pistol grip, but if you connect the bottom of the pistol grip to the stock, this is no longer meets the definition of having a pistol grip. So this was a very typical sort of modification that was done, but FEG's unique thumbhole stock here is distinctive. This is specifically the pattern that was used on the SA-85, so that's what we see on this guy. If we take off the dust cover, the internals of the rifle are identical to all of the other semi-auto AKs that FEG did. So there's nothing different here between the pre-ban versions in the early 80s, this version here, or in fact even the post-ban, like the SA-2000s, which we'll talk about in a moment, which were guns that were later modified to have single-stack magazines. But they've all got the same mechanism, same trigger mechanism, same bolt carrier, same bolt, same recoil spring, same top cover. All of that was identical because all of these restrictions, whether they were the import ban or the domestic assault weapons ban itself, were all fundamentally based on nothing more than aesthetic characteristics, nothing actual mechanical about the guns, just things that changed how they looked on the outside. Now, there were some AKs that were modified for like thumbhole stock style importation that included modified receivers. The SA-85 is not one of those. So the stock is held in place by 2 big screws. This is actually a standard wood screw that you would use for a regular fixed wooden stock. Note that the rear trunnion here has 2 holes. A regular fixed wooden stock uses both of them. The thumbhole stock only uses the back one. And then the second screw, which I've already mostly unthreaded here, is, there we go, so that's right there, and it is actually going down into what would normally be the screw for the pistol grip. So with those 2 out, we can pull off the thumbhole stock. That's what it looks like on the inside. So there's your second screw, which, as I said, would normally attach to a bolt holding on the pistol grip. The receiver here is exactly the same as a standard AK receiver. The fire control group's in the same spot. You still have this square hole for the sort of the T-shaped block that attaches to the bolt on the pistol grip, regular rear trunnion. So they didn't actually change any of this. They just adapted a wood stock to fit onto it. A grand total of 24,500 of these rifles were imported into the US between 1990 and 1994. I think it's worth pointing out, you add the pre-ban guns, the 8,000 pre-bans, you're talking about 33,000 rifles total, come into the US as semi-autos from Hungary. At the same time, they have done about 6 times that much business in military exports. So this is a relatively small part of FEG's export market, but it is a relevant and important part. We're talking something that's going to be 12%, I think, run the math in my head, about 12% of their total sales are semi-auto rifles to the US. Well, the fun ends once again in 1994, because that's when the assault weapons ban is passed in the United States, and it is going to specifically ban importation of the FEG SA-85M by name. So this is out. FEG would take a couple years to reassess the new law, along with Castnar, KBI, their importer, and they did actually come up with a new version, and that was the SA-2000M, which they introduced in 1998, and they would import a number of those, thousands of those, between 1998 and 2002, I believe, if I remember correctly. The big difference there is this was a rifle that was designed to use a single stack magazine instead of the standard double stack AK mags, which is how they got around the 1994 prohibition. Different name, and it doesn't use a double stack magazine. So we'll cover the SA-2000M in a separate video, or of course, if you're interested in having the data, the raw data to work with yourself, you can check out Headstamp's new book specifically on Hungarian AKs, which has a section specifically on the SA-2000M, along with coverage of all of Hungary's really interesting variety of military AKs. There's a ton of new information in this book that's never been published before. It's great original research, and I'm really excited to have it available for pre-launch now and to be able to deliver it to you guys in a few months when they're all printed and ready. So check the link in the description text to get in and get a copy for yourself of our pre-order on that book. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Perhaps you have one of these vintage rifles, and hopefully now you know a bit more about its place in the AK world. Thanks for watching.